but it is important to get the facts straight. So parents, you know, we read books, we try to find the advice of experts, we talk to all of our friends, we think back on how we learned about sex, all so that we can have the conversation. I was born in 1955. As you know, my mother is an Irish mother. She was raised by my grandmother, another Irish mother. Sex was not talked about openly. As a matter of fact, my mother did not get the conversation. Her mother never told her anything about the facts of life. She had to figure it out all on her own. And so when I came along, she did not want that to happen to me. But she needed a little guidance, some help from the experts. And she found it in the North Country Catholic, the weekly newspaper to which she subscribed. She was paging through that, and there it was, right on the bottom right-hand corner of the next to the last page. A little advertisement, oh, not even that big. And it said, Parents' Guide to Sex Education. My mother read on. It was for a book. A book for children about sex, written by the expert himself, Reverend Monsignor Thomas Flanagan, S.J. Well, this was exactly what my mother was looking for. She sent off for that book. It arrived in a brown paper wrapper. Now, I don't know if my mother ever actually read the book. But the day after it arrived, she came up to me and she said, I know you've been wondering about things. Here, read this. And if you have any questions, come and ask me. Well, to tell you the truth, I hadn't been wondering about things. At least not the kind of things my mother thought I was wondering about. I was 10 years old. I was in the 5th grade in a rural Catholic elementary school. I jumped rope on the playground during recess. My favorite book was Black Beauty, about a horse. I watched the Andy Griffith Show on TV, and Father Knows Best, where the parents slept in separate twin beds. If I was wondering about anything at all, it was about how to win the rivalry between my best friends, Carolyn Molnar and Barbara McNulty. We always tried to beat each other out and see who could get the highest grades in class. That was what I was wondering about. But my mother handed me the book and I took it. You know, it looked an awful lot like the Baltimore Catechism. Now, there may be a few of you who don't really know what the Baltimore Catechism is, and so I will explain. It was a doctrinal manual that the nuns used. 499 questions and answers to all the mysteries of life. And this book looked just like it, same pale blue cover. And you know, to be honest, I already knew about sex. The nuns had told us. Sex was for when you get married. Sex was only for having children. And it happened in that order. Since I wasn't planning on getting married anytime soon, I didn't really think about sex. But I took the book and I started to read. The first chapter was about flowers. It talked about pistils and stamens, the seed-bearing organs of flowers. And there was some discussion about nectar and bees and pollination, about how a male plant fertilizes the female plant. This book was nothing like the Baltimore Catechism. The Baltimore Catechism had nice, neat little formulas that gave you the question and the answer. This thing just left me totally confused. But I continued to read. The second chapter had nice little drawings of cows in a field. Talked about how you needed a bull and a cow in order to get a calf. Well, this made more sense because my uncles were all farmers. I knew that they all had a bull in the pasture and there were plenty of cows and plenty of calves. Then we moved on to the chapter on human reproduction. There was a long, convoluted explanation of the female reproductive system. They talked about fallopian tubes, and ovaries, and eggs, and cycles, and the uterus. There was even a nice little drawing of the fallopian tubes. Now, if my fallopian tubes had been hanging off my ear or dangling from my elbow, I might have recognized them. But as it was, I had no idea where any of this stuff was located. And then I got to that very brief, concise little paragraph that explained the male role in reproduction. It talked about the sperm. It said that when a sperm met an egg, a baby was conceived. There were no drawings. And the author of the book had left out a very vital piece of information. He had not explained how the sperm got from the male to the female. Now I had plenty to wonder about. And so I put all of my deductive reasoning skills to work to solve the problem. Skills that had been honed through 5 years of education and 10 years of worldly experience. I knew that the Blessed Virgin Mary had been overshadowed by the Holy Spirit, and that was how the baby Jesus was conceived. I began to think that sperm were invisible. I began to think that sperm just floated through the air, waiting to attack the proper recipient. I began to think that I could just be walking down the street. I'd get hit by a flying sperm and voila, I'd be pregnant. Well, this made me worry a lot. I began to think that what I needed to do was buy one of those Gloucester fisherman raincoats, you know, those bright yellow slickers that cover you from the neck to the ankle, and you got the big floppy hat. That way, when I was walking down the street and I got attacked by the flying sperm, they wouldn't penetrate, they'd just slide right off. But these thoughts of spontaneous pregnancy, well, they came at the most inopportune moments. When I was watching Father Knows Best. When I was taking my math test. When I was in church. I knew I needed help. My mother had said if I had any questions, I should come and ask her. So that's what I decided to do. One day, while she was standing at the kitchen sink washing dishes, I walked right up to her. And without any explanation or preparation of any kind, I blurted out with extreme urgency exactly what was on my mind. What happens if I get pregnant? And my mother took her hands out of the water. She turned and looked at me. Her face was confused and bewildered. What was wrong? She'd done her best. She'd been honest and straightforward. She'd given me the facts of life, and now here was her 10-year-old daughter expressing wishes for the impossible. But my mother's confusion turned to determination. And she fixed me with one of those steely gazes that only an Irish mother can give you. And she issued a potent interdiction designed to prevent any thought of transgression. She looked at me and she said, "I'll cut your legs off to the knees, that's what happened." And you know, after that, I didn't wonder at all. And that's the story.